In this series, we'll go over the legacy ban list and explain what got the cards banned and if they need to stay banned. We're going to go over a few combo cards today, explaining how they were used and if they could be unbanned. Starting us off, we have Bazaar of Baghdad. This is a land with the ability where you can tap it to draw 2 cards and then discard 3 cards. This card was banned in September of 2004. Why was Bazaar of Baghdad banned? As it turns out, this card was way too good at filling your graveyard with cards. There are tons of cards in Magic like Earthcraft, which can return themselves in the graveyard to the battlefield for free if you manage to put enough cards in your graveyard to fuel them. Even better, you can combine it with the incredibly powerful Dredge mechanic. This is a mechanic where, whenever you would draw a card, you instead mill a number of cards equal to the Dredge number and put that Dredge card from your graveyard into your hand. With Bazaar, you could tap it to draw 2 cards, allowing you to Dredge 2 from your graveyard and mill up to 12 cards. Then you can discard 3 cards from your hand, allowing you to put those Dredge cards back into your graveyard to dredge them back next turn. You could also combine with cards like Bastion Ridwalla, a card with a Madness cost of 0. Madness means that whenever you discard this card, you cast it for its Madness cost. So whenever you discard Ridwalla, you get to cast a free creature. There's a ton of different graveyard cards you could use with Bazaar. Now, while every time you tap the Bazaar, you did lose some card advantage, the raw power of being able to move so many cards around and put so many cards into your graveyard made this card insanely powerful. The card advantage doesn't matter when your graveyard might as well be your hand. Bazaar was simply way too strong with graveyard effects and has only ever gotten stronger as Magic has gone on and more graveyard effects have gotten printed. Could Bazaar be unbanned? No, absolutely not. Graveyard decks aren't currently at the top of the metagame, but Bazaar would be enough to change that. There really isn't much of a difference between the graveyard cards at Legal Legacy and Legal and Vintage, and Bazaar-based graveyard decks are currently easily the second best deck in the metagame. Seeing that Bazaar is the only really important missing piece in Legacy, Bazaar getting unbanned would make them the best or second best deck easily. How could Bazaar be fixed to be unbanned? Something like actually putting a mana cost and activate the ability would help. Making it cost as little as 1 mana would fix the card. For a long time, lots of graveyard decks ran Bazaar as their only land because it was simply that good. Making it cost even 1 mana would be a major nerf to it. It would be enough to make it unbannable, but the card would still be very strong. Next up, we have Channel. This is a sorcery with a mana cost of 2 green. It has the effect where, for the rest of the turn, anytime you could activate a mana ability, you can pay 1 life to add 1 colorless mana. This card was banned in March of 1994, and that ban carried on into Legacy. Why was Channel banned? Channel was actually part of the very first combo in all of Magic. How the combo worked was you would use Black Lotus, a 0 mana artifact that you could tap to sack to add 3 mana of any one color, to add 3 green mana. You would use this to make 19 colorless mana with Channel. Then you would use a second Black Lotus to make a red mana, and then you would cast Fireball, a card that would deal X damage to any target, where X was how much mana you paid. By putting 21 mana into Fireball, you could kill your opponent on turn 1. And Channel and Lotus had made more than enough mana to let you do this. This was the very first combo in all of Magic, and it was a huge problem at that point in the game. You see, at this point, there actually wasn't a playset limit in the game. So people just played 20 copies of Channels, 20 copies of Fireballs, and 20 Black Lotuses, and were able to draw into this combo basically every game. Considering how consistent and powerful this combo was, the only real solution to the issue was to make some major changes. So, Wizards acted by introducing a playset limit of 4 for every card besides basic lands, and banned Channel for good measure. The combo still would have been viable, and without cards like Force of Will at this point in the game, it still could have led to fairly consistent turn 1 kills, with no way for your opponent to respond. Considering how many turn 1 kills the card enabled, the card has been and has stayed banned for most of the history of the game. Could Channel be unbanned? Surprisingly, yes. It would be a new combo deck in Legacy, but it would have more than its fair share of counterplay. Most of the busted fast mana that enabled it is, and will stay, banned. So you usually have to wait until turn 2 or 3 to get your Channel combo off. Turn 1 kills won't be any more consistent or resilient than other turn 1 kills in the format, and honestly, the payoff for the card might not be there. Fireballing your opponent doesn't seem that practical with how the math works out, as you often won't have enough life to kill your opponent, not to mention how weak it is to cards like Lightning Bolt. Now that cards like Force of Will, Force of Negation, and Daze are out and heavily played in Legacy, the game has kind of caught up to Channel in its power level. How could this card be fixed to be unbanned? As previously stated, the card is probably fine. Next up, we have Demonic Consultation. This is an instant with a mana cost of 1 black. It has the effect where you choose a card name, then you exile the top 6 cards of your deck. You exile the cards from the top of your deck until you exile the named card, and you put that card into your hand. This card was banned in September of 2000. Why was Demonic Consultation banned? Most of the time, Consultation was just an instant speed version of Demonic Tutor. The downside of exiling random cards from your deck usually wasn't enough to stop the card from being really strong, though it is a real downside in a lot of situations. Since you named the card first, you could get very unlucky and exile your entire deck if the first 6 cards you hit are all your copies of the card you named. As a result, people usually only name a card they have 4 copies of to make sure they don't accidentally just kill themselves. However, in recent times, a new card has come out that has made this card even stronger, namely Thassa's Oracle, which will win you the game if it enters the battlefield if you have no cards in your library. With this, Consultation can not only find you key cards whenever you need them, it can actually be one of your combo pieces. You see, by naming a card not in your deck, Consultation will just exile your entire library, allowing you to win off of Oracle whenever you play it. This didn't end up factoring into why the card was initially banned, as it was just a 1-mana tutor in the old days of Magic, but it is important for seeing why the card might need to stay banned. Could Demonic Consultation be unbanned? No. Demonic Tutor is already too good for Legacy, and Consultation is better than Demonic Tutor in a lot of circumstances, thanks to being able to be a combo piece as well. If you compare it to Vampiric Tutor, it becomes even more obvious why the card needs to stay banned. Unbanning the card would spring entirely new dominant decks into being and make combo decks far too good in the format. How could Demonic Consultation be fixed to be unbanned? Wizards has already found a way to do this with the card Tainted Pact. This is a 2-mana instant that allows you to exile the top card of your library, then you can put it into your hand unless you exiled another card with the same name this way. Then you repeat this process until you either exile 2 cards of the same name, or put a card into your hand. This card has a lot of the same ideas as Tainted Pact, as it's a risky tutor to cast, but it can have a high payoff. However, restricting how you build your deck this way makes it so that it can't be quite as strong as a tutor or as a combo piece. Alternatively, you could always just bump up the mana cost. Next up, we have Earthcraft. This is an enchantment with the mana cost of 1 and 1 green. It has the ability where you can tap an untapped creature you control to untap target basic land. This card was banned in March of 2003. Why was Earthcraft banned? The issue was that there was ways to go infinite and win the game on the spot. One of the most famous is Squirrel Nest, an aura with an enchant land that gives the enchanted land the ability to tap to create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. So, what you would do is tap the basic land with Nest on it to make a squirrel, then use the squirrel to activate Earthcraft, untapping the land that the Nest is enchanting, then you simply just repeat this infinitely and you swarm the board with tons of squirrels and kill your opponent next turn. This is one of the multiple uses for the card, but it's one of the easiest ways to take advantage of the card. Another way to use it is to combine it with Nettle Sentinel and Glimpse of Nature. Sentinel is a 2/2 for 1 green with the ability where you untap it whenever you cast a green spell, but it doesn't untap normally. Glimpse is a 1-mana sorcerer that allows you to draw a card each time you cast a creature spell for the rest of the turn. By using Earthcraft, you can tap your Sentinel to untap a land, use the mana to cast a creature spell, letting you draw a new card and getting your mana back. This can let you get some pretty crazy turns, getting a huge board and sometimes winning the game right there. Now, this is only one of the few ways you can take advantage of the card, but all of them together made Wizards think the card was too good. Could Earthcraft be unbanned? Yes, easily. These combos are much weaker than a lot of the other combos currently legal in Legacy. Elves don't really need the card, and it's doubtful whether they'd want to play it given the fact that Elves decks are trimming their Glimpse packages in favor of a better fair game. All in all, Earthcraft just doesn't have a home. Next, we have Fastbond. This is an enchantment with the mana cost of 1 green. It has the abilities where you can play any number of lands on each of your turns. It also has the ability where, whenever you play a land, if it wasn't the first land you played this turn, Fastbound deals 1 damage to you. This card was banned in 1996. So, why was Fastbound banned? It turns out, being able to play a ton of lands is really strong. This card basically turns all of your lands into Moxen, as you can just play as many as you want, getting a ton of mana right away. There's not necessarily one combo with Fastbound that broke it, as land-heavy decks were pretty busted with it on their own. But there were a few cards that were really broken with it. Zuran Orb is a 0-mana artifact with the ability where you can sacrifice a land to gain 2 life. Ramanap Excavator is a 2/3 for 3 with the ability where you can play land cards from your graveyard. What you can do is play a land, tap it, and then sacrifice it with Orb. Then you can repeat the process because Excavator allows you to play it from your graveyard. This can allow you to make infinite mana and gain infinite life, but you can make this even better. Once you have infinite mana and life, you can use a card like Horizon Canopy to draw a card, repeating a similar loop. Now, while this is a good use for the card, Fastbound is one of those cards where the combos aren't really the only reason to play the card. Just getting to get 4 or so mana on one turn is great for any deck, and there are quite a few decks that are built around lands in Legacy. The eponymous lands decks will usually play worse versions of the card like Exploration or Manabound, and they would love to have Fastbound come back. Overall, Fastbound was just way too strong and powered up way too many land-based strategies. So, could Fastbound be unbanned? The answer to this is probably no. The card is just way too good, and a lot of the decks that it would make better don't really need the help. Lands is already a good deck, and giving it another piece of crazy support would make it too good and make it really hard for the decks to compete with. How could Fastbond be fixed to be unbanned? Letting you play any number of lands on your turn is just way too good of an ability, and there's not really a way to fix this without restricting the number of lands you can play off of it. Paying 1 life just isn't close to a high enough cost. If you had to do something far much harsher, like discard a card, it would be a lot closer. It would still be strong, but at least it would be a little bit more balanced. And to wrap up this video, we're going to go over a few cards that weren't banned for power level reasons. Chaos Orb, Falling Star, and Shahrazad, which are all banned in every format of Magic simply because they're too incompatible with the game's designs as a competitive game. Starting with Chaos Orb, this is an artifact with a mana cost of 2. It has the ability where you can pay 1 and tap it to flip Chaos Orb over the table from a height of at least 1 foot, and then destroy each permanent it's touching. Then you destroy Chaos Orb. Falling Star is a sorcery with a mana cost of 2 and 1 red. Similar to Chaos Orb, it requires you to flip it over the table at least 1 foot in the air, then it deals 3 damage to each creature it lands on, and you tap all those creatures. Finally, Shahrazad is a sorcery with a mana cost of 2 white. It has the ability where the players play a subgame of Magic using their libraries as their decks, then each player who doesn't win the subgame loses half their life. Chaos Orb and Falling Star were banned in November of 1995, and Shahrazad was banned in December of 2007. So, why were these cards banned? As I said earlier, they go against Magic's design as a competitive game. The issue with Chaos Orb and Star is that not only do they test skill that no other card tests, they also cause a whole host of logistical issues. The best counterplay for these cards is to play their cards as far apart as possible, so that they can't touch more than one of your permanents. This would cause a huge issue at tournaments, as players would take up far too much room at their tables. These issues are good enough reason to ban the cards. Shahrazad was banned simply because it's a headache to deal with. The card makes games take way too long to finish. In tournament settings especially, this is a huge issue, as it can easily stall tournaments to a halt. It can also be used to stall games for a draw, something that no one really wants to play against when they go to a tournament. All these issues combined lead to the cards just being banned. Could these cards be unbanned? No, not at all. The logistical issues they pose are still there, and honestly, no one really wants to deal with them in a tournament setting. The cards would need to be changed substantially to be able to come back. How could these cards be fixed to be unbanned? Chaos Orb and Falling Star would need to have their mechanics changed to simply randomly select cards and destroy or deal damage to them. This would fix their issues, though it would also kind of ruin the fun of the cards, as you couldn't really get good at using them like you could with the original versions. Shahrazad basically can't be fixed without entirely scrapping the card. The payoff doesn't really matter, nor does the cost. Playing a second game just is a mechanic that really should be allowed to exist in the game. Alright, and that's the video. If you have any ideas for future videos similar to this one, go ahead and let us know down in the comments below.